Hi, welcome to Intro to Mass Communication. I just want to do a quick video to introduce myself. I'm Tim McKenzie. I'm going to do a little bit longer introduction, not much longer, and just sort of walk you through the course in a few spots. But I always like to introduce and say, welcome to Intro to Mass Communication. This course is one that, it's typically people who are maybe have some interest in mass communication. Maybe they want to go into broadcasting, journalism, public relations, marketing, things of that nature. Even television production, film, social media, video game development. All those are types of mass comm, and so it's part of the major. And hopefully, this course helps you with that, as well as I think just in general, mass communication is a course that lets us think about how much mass communication influences our daily life and learn about the development and history of them. One of the things that's interesting is mass communication or television was originally, I'm not mass communication, while, somewhat relatively new, I mean, in the sense that like the early mass communication would be things like books, newspapers, magazines, and then, which most of us kind of don't think about, but they are a form of mass communication. But then later we get things like, radio, recordings on records, music, the internet, television, movies, all that we clearly see more as mass communication. I think all of us can relate to that a lot clearer. And those things are really, even books and television, books and newspapers and magazines really didn't have their heyday until maybe a few hundred years ago. And so really mass communication is a fairly newer phenomenon as a form of communication for the human species. But it's interesting in that it pervades our life to such a degree. You'll find in the first chapter that, I think like 12, 13 hours, depending upon what study and when, is how many hours a day people use and consume media or mass communication in some form. Sometimes people are doing two at the same time. For example, maybe you're reading an article while listening to the radio. I had a friend who once, which I may mention this later, used to like to play online poker while watching a movie and doing email and other things in between hands or in between times he had to play. And I mean, I just was always kind of amused by that. He'd be doing 3-4 different things simultaneously. Well, if you're doing 3 or 4 things simultaneously, that does add up to your time with mass communication. So that may affect that. But those are all kind of just factors in that. All that to say is it's something that's very pervasive in our lives, something that's very big. And hopefully you get a greater appreciation for its role and some of the theory and ideas that we have, some of the questions about the ethics of it. And we hope you get a chance to do that. Just real quick before I'm going to give you a tour of this course. But before I do that, I'm just going to show you real quick. This is, you've seen this video. I'm going to put it here. Actually, I don't have a link for it yet. I'm going to put it up here at, course intro video up here. And I'll put it right above that. Then you'll have the syllabus. If you click about the instructor, I give a little bit of a narrative about it. And I'm going to embed a video about, kind of me introducing myself just quickly. I already made that video. I just haven't put it in here. But then in here, it's going to say course introduction video. This is going to be a chance for us to get a tour of the course and a chance for you to get a little bit of a tour of the course. And that'll be there, and that'll be a little bit more in depth. So make sure to go through all those. That's going to kind of give a few tips and highlights. And then the rest of it's, what the schedule is, computer requirements, expected computer skills, which maybe won't be anything. That's just real quick. Next steps. And then we go right into modules and so on. So if you have any questions, as always, I always tell people, before I let you go, I always forget that people always, sometimes people, like right now, a lot of us are taking a lot of online courses, but that's not always the case. So hopefully most of you are familiar with it, but a lot of times people aren't familiar. And I always like to tell people, what are the keys to being successful online? And I always say that there's sort of 2 things that are really important. And one is set aside time. When you're in a classroom, you have a set aside time to work on the class. And so if you treat this class like a classroom class where 3 hours a week I set aside time and I work on it, And then I spend 3 hours on homework at these times. So I spend like 6 hours a week because, you know, for every hour in the classroom, you'd have a couple hours outside. So you might have like 6 to 9 hours a week worth a week of work, maybe 3 hours sometimes, but you know, you have a little bit of work every day in this class. So I always tell people, you know, what you want to do is you want to set aside the time. Say, I'm going to work on this class every day, or I'm going to work on it on Tuesdays from this time and Wednesdays from this time. That's the first thing. The second thing is in a classroom, sometimes just as I come in, I'm standing up at the front, I'm saying, hey, how's everybody doing? What's up? And people will say, hey, I had a question about this reading. And then you overhear your friend, your classmate ask a question, and you get the answer. That doesn't exist in an online environment. So one of the things I always say is don't be afraid to ask. That's really the best thing you can do. After a couple people ask me a question, I'll sometimes write a response, you know, send an announcement to the whole class. But sometimes I don't realize things are wrong or mistaken until somebody sends me that message. So please, if you see something you don't think is right, if you're confused, send me an email. That's what I'm here for. That's my job. So I'm not usually that bothered by that. Occasionally it bothers me when I, you know, have provided ample explanation and then people ask me a silly question. But, you know, in lieu of that, I'd rather you ask. And so make sure to ask questions if you have them. And that's kind of the two keys is, you know, set aside time and be proactive in asking questions. Don't be afraid to send me questions. As a final note, I haven't set it up yet, but if you find an error in the class, whether it be grammatical, date, you know, something's wrong in the class, a link doesn't work, anything like that. If you send that to me and you let me know, I will give you some extra credit, maybe 1 or 2 points, but you know, those add up. And so some students have been known to find several errors. I try not to have them, but that is something that's always the case. It's also the fact that this semester I've decided I'm going to switch completely over to Canvas. And so it's my first semester using it completely. I've used it kind of dip my toe in the water with Canvas before, which is the learning management system we have. And so, you know, that's something you might want to, you know, I just wanted to kind of give you a heads up that, you know, there might be some errors as well as I'm redeveloping all this material kind of a little bit on the fly, trying to get it ready for the fall, that there could be some errors related to that or just some confusion on my part. And so I recognize that there might be several errors and just let me know and I'll try to fix them. You know, I think it improves me and I'll give you some extra credit for letting me know. And don't be afraid to tell me. Sometimes people go, well, I hate to tell you, you know, I don't want to be critical or anything. It's like, you know, I mean, if you're finding errors, then that's something that shouldn't happen, and that's fine. It doesn't bother me. It won't. You're not going to offend me by any means. So, okay, I think that's it. I don't know why I'm still sharing my screen with you, but there you go. Have a good one, and I will see you around. Send me emails if you have any questions.